Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Chris Petri. Welcome. Today we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to enjoy some time doing some compositions on rocks and stones in our watercolor paintings. Uh, Brian from YouTube requested that I do a video on this subject, and I think it's a great subject matter. I don't believe I've ever done a detailed video on rocks and stones in landscapes and watercolors and so forth. So let's get right into it. We'll talk about the details. Here I've just, as you can see, I've sectioned off my watercolor paper into fourths. So I have uh, everything broken down into quarters. So I just took some artist tape and put it right across the center of the paper both ways, horizontally and vertically. So now I've broken my paper down into four sections, and I think this is great for small compositions when we're working, just to get some ideas when we're maybe getting ready to create a painting, um, or we just need to practice up on some subject matter. Great way to do it. We can set them aside, put them in a folder, and save them, and then when we're maybe encountering the same subject matter, we can go back and look at our compositions and see how we did it. And I often do this when I'm working on paintings. I'll go back and look at my previous sketches and compositions that I've done, and then I can recall what I did at the time, and it kind of comes back to me, and then it's more easy to paint. So here I'm just doing some rocks on a facade. So here we're gonna be looking at, let's say, a facade of a building, maybe a cafe or a nice city scene by a restaurant. So we're thinking of a stone front on a building. We're not going to draw every single stone. We're going to leave some things a little bit, abstract, let's say, or we're going to let the viewer of our paintings kind of fill in the blanks a little bit and leave a little bit of mystery in our paintings. Makes it more exciting. So here I'm going to put a couple windows up here, and again, this is just a composition, small composition here we're doing for practice, so it's not a finished painting. So I'm just going to rough in some windows just so we have some more details in our composition here to make it more believable and more realistic as we do our composition on stone. So with stone usually, stone can vary in color from pretty much all the colors of the color spectrum. Here on my palette, I'm going to spritz the palette a little bit each time before I paint. I spritz the paints. I start off with a clean palette, all the paints wiped off. Some fresh water we start out with. And with stonework on this type of stone here, it's going to be a mixture of colors. Stone usually has all the colors of the spectrum um, in varying degrees. So sometimes you'll see maybe some stone that's more brown or more red or more blue, but most times it's always got a lot of different variety of colors, which is a lot of fun and exciting to paint. So here I'm using the more of the brown earth tones. Some burnt umber is at the bottom, the darkest brown, and there's burnt sienna, which is a little more reddish brown. And then I've got some blue on the right, some red on the left, some alizarin crimson red there, cobalt blue on the right, a little bit of olive green too. And we just go in, we're going to put in some blues and golds, the siennas, raw sienna. And I do some splashing. Perfect place to do splashing is on stonework. You can immediately you can get 500 small little tiny stones into that wall by just a few little taps of the brush, and that makes it fun. No stress. And I'm just gonna fill in some color around the stone. This could be a building with all stone on the facade of the building, or it could be a building that has maybe stone and maybe some plaster, just some cement coating on it as well. So here we're just tapping in some blues and earth tones, some browns, burnt sienna, burnt umber, raw sienna, some blues. You got cobalt blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson for the reds. So here we're just doing some, adding some color to that wall, like warm color. So I use a tiny touch of cadmium orange here. And that little tiny touch of cadmium orange goes a long way. And it really makes a good feeling of warmth for that wall. So if there's sunshine out and that sunshine is on that wall, that cadmium orange is going to make it really feel warm and just bring out the feeling of warmth on that stone surface, that stone wall. And then we'll have some darker mixture here. We'll do the door with a darker mixture just so we can really accentuate the doorway. And lots of dark mixture. Maybe the windows too, we'll do some dark. And that's just French ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And as I like to do with doors, I'll leave maybe half of it really, really dark, and then I'll maybe put a little bit of raw sienna in the middle of that door, just so there's a feeling of light kind of shining on the door. And some more burnt sienna, burnt umber. And again, I always mention, always try to mix the same colors you're using all around the entire composition or painting. So if you're using burnt umber, use it all the way around your painting. If you're using some of the cobalt blue for your stonework, use it all around as well. So yeah, always mix your colors. So the idea is to sort of make it a harmonious composition. So the colors, like it wouldn't look good if we put one color, like let's say brown on the right side, and then put all blue stones on the left side. That would look kind of lopsided or unbalanced. So when you repeat your colors all throughout your composition here, you're just guaranteeing that it's going to look pleasing and harmonious, and it'll have a nice feeling to it, and a good balanced feel to the look. And then I sometimes blot with a little bit of tissue, just to sometimes lift a little bit of paint. If you feel you've added a little too much paint to an area, you can just quick tap a little bit of paint off with some tissue. I wouldn't necessarily make that a major part of a technique, but it is good to utilize sometimes. So you can always feel like you have a little bit of an emergency tissue on hand to the set aside to the just in case something goes wrong in your painting and water starts flooding out and making some sort of a mess on your painting. And then here we're looking at this will be our next composition. We're going to do a seascape with stonework jutting down into the ocean at the shoreline. So here I'm using a reference photo just to get an idea. So I have one of my watercolor books from my library, and I looked to see that photograph to get some general ideas of what I'm going to do. And now we'll just go in and we'll do a nice stone cropping of stones just jutting down into the ocean to the shoreline. And again, as we do our next composition, very important, very, very important, we clean up our palette, wipe off all that old paint, and we start off with a nice fresh clean palette. We empty the water out, empty our water container out, and put fresh new water in there. And then we just we'll do our drawing. So here we're going to draw the stone masses that are at the shoreline, and they're jutting down into the water. Looks very exciting, powerful, dynamic. This makes for a great painting. The powerful slant and angles of that stone angling toward the ocean shoreline looks just great. And so again, it's a small composition. This is not a finished painting. We're just going to get some ideas here. We're using our similar colors always. My palette never changes usually. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, that's our darks, so that's what we're going to use here. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, maybe a little touch of alizarin crimson for like a reddish color, just for variety. And then we just start carefully placing the paint, spots of paint onto the paper at the level of the water where the ocean is, where it's meeting the rocks. And then we vary things a little bit. Some really, really dark sections, and then some lighter sections to those stones. Some splashing that gives you right away the feeling of water, just maybe a wave coming in and crashing into the stone, and it's water splashing. Perfect technique for oceanscapes and seascapes and any kind of water type scenes, the splashing and spattering technique. And then here we're going to add some more powerful dynamic darks for the stone, jutting down into the shoreline here, into the ocean. And my friend from YouTube, Brian, had mentioned that he wanted to see some different rock ideas and stone ideas for watercolor, so we were making this video for him especially. And then we're just going to put in some feeling of water at the shoreline here, the waves coming in, the splashing of the waves, and we're going to darken it up in the foreground here just to give you a feeling of dimension to it, so that things always appear darker closer to us when we're looking at something. In the distance it gets lighter and lighter usually, so you can kind of have that, you can always have that idea in your mind as an artist when you're looking at subject matter. If you're especially outdoors and you're looking at landscapes and seascapes, things will get a little lighter as they go off in the distance, and so you just utilize that technique. And here we'll put some tiny little touch of cadmium orange along the bottom of the sky. Gives it a nice feeling of warmth closer to the horizon line. And then here I'm going to use even a smaller brush yet. That's a number 4, a Skoda travel brush, Charles Reed series. That's a number 4, really nice pointy brush. And then here we'll just do a touch more detail to those rocks, just to give more of an idea of that really dynamic, sharp lines and angles to the rocks along here, along this beautiful ocean scene. And some more spattering just for the crashing of the ocean waves and the water. And you can just imagine this being painted larger. This makes a great painting, just enlarged. Here we're doing a small composition, obviously, but it's always good to start off small, and then we can work our ideas larger. Okay, I will start a second video, part 2. We're going to do some round boulders and rocks along a shoreline with some crashing waves and then some beautiful grass and a nice church building at the top of the hill. So we're going to do a beautiful dynamic scene next on part 2. So stay tuned, come right back, and we'll do part 2.